Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Disco Elysium. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you chose to join me today as we are talking about, well, women. About one woman, but also women. Last episode was very much focused about that. It sort of ended on a different note, but that's because I ramble about all the things more than the things that I ramble about. Oh, Colonel. Anyway, and the deserter over here, I think he had feelings... Whatever kind of feelings, but he had feelings for Clashy. I'm gonna say that. He sighs. There's nothing to hold on to. Only this. It's not enough. The coals of his eyes glisten suddenly, like stones dripping with water. Is he crying? Man needs to feel something else. In this fight, it helps if you have your eye on something there. He looks to the city. It's weakness, I know. There have been others? Yes. Over the years, it's not unproletarian to feel something. That's not... You said jealousy was a reactionary feeling. But his feelings are completely born out of trauma and absolute loneliness and isolation. More than loneliness, because you can be isolated and not lonely, and vice versa. So yeah, his feelings are, for one, completely misplaced and born out of, well, whatever they're born out of, but specifically influenced by the loneliness. He's been alone forever. Well, was that why you left the dried flowers behind our window? No. He starts to shake his head again. A sunflower on a withered stalk. Why then? I don't really know. I was there one night and she was crying like a child in the corner of her room on the floor, like she does sometimes. When was this? The day after I'd killed him. And you brought her Maybells? Yes. He looks at the charred logs. I don't know why I do the things I do anymore. It's very difficult for me to choose either one of these. Although this one might be the easiest one. This one is kind of complicated. Because it's probably what he wanted, to console her. I don't know. I don't know either. I'm gonna say nothing. And neither does he. He lowers his head like a sunflower on a withered stalk again. In the silence, the lieutenant draws a line in his notes. One more down. So in conclusion, it wasn't about him. It was about her. Her, he repeats, staring at the ashes, and then the reeds. There's a twitch in the corner of his eye. The lieutenant nods at you in acknowledgement. And we extracted the motive! This was a ride and a half. I did not see that coming. Even at the beginning of the last episode, I did not see that coming. That's it. Motive. We have it. The old man looks at you, suddenly remembering something. Where is she? That Clashy. I haven't seen her there for days. She got away. We don't know where she is. Good for her. He looks at the city and nods. That girl kept staring into the scope, you know. In the end, this last week, kept staring at the island. At night, crying or smoking on the roof, like she knew I was here. He says to no one in particular, it doesn't matter. Across the water, on a dilapidated jetty in a nameless village, made of gray cinder block houses with Eternite roofs, 2 police officers and 1 special consultant look across a narrow strip of sea. That's our esprit de corps saying. He's there doing what exactly? I don't know. Satellite officer Vicmer points at the ruins. Behind the anti-aircraft something? That's why we can't see him. Special consultant Heidelstam is optimistic. We'll see the boat when he comes. Let's go get a coffee until then. I know this interesting little place where... His voice trails off as the three walk down the jetty. As the men go, Patrol Officer Minot looks back over her shoulder at the crumbling fortification in the snowfall, like a rotten tooth rising out of the water. Good luck, Harry, she thinks. This is our empathy working through our esprit de corps, who is seeing through the... like imagining what's happening. Good luck, Harry, she thinks. You need something good for this. We could get more. The lieutenant uses the opportunity to tell you in a lowered voice. We've got him talking. Who knows what he's seen and done over the years, says our logic. You could get more out of him. He likes talking. And I like talking as well. Isn't that lovely? I kind of want to go back to this one that he says to himself. It doesn't matter. I wish this were a little bit more harrowing. I wish this were a little bit more... I wish it said something else or something more about his state of mind. One of the best lines, I think, for me. Did I mention that in this Let's Play? I might have alluded to it. I don't think I've ever said this in a Let's Play. Almost 10,000 episodes in, or 10,000 videos in. I don't think I've ever mentioned probably my favorite... It's not my favorite line, I suppose, but it's definitely the line I remember the most in any media, any fiction whatsoever. And it's in a really goofy anime series that you might have watched, because it's really famous. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann is the name of the series. And there's this one line that Shimon says. And he says, it's not my business. Or something to that extent. It's not quite that. I don't think it is that. Although I saw, like, in subtitles. So, like, he says it in Japanese. Which probably lands differently and with more meaning or less meaning. I don't know. But in English, it got translated as, it's not my business, or this is not about me. I think this is not about me. I think it's the line. And the line says so much about Shimon as a character. I thought that was, like, the scene in general, like, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And the line is, I think it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life, honestly. The one line. That is the one line in fiction. But, like, it works there because it's sort of like a crystallization of a character. A character that honestly hasn't really been explored up until that point in the series. And of course here, this character has been thoroughly explored. But we're playing a role-playing game. It's got a lot more room for that. But I wish this line said something else, because as it is, it doesn't. Or if it does, I can't see it. I don't know what he means by that, is what I mean to say. He says to no one in particular, it doesn't matter. I think I know what he means. But, like, it feels like a mistranslation, almost. Because, like, if he said, it couldn't have been about me, or she couldn't have been looking at me, or something like that. Of course, we know what she was doing, but that's beside the point. Anyway. Yeah, let's look down over here. Still have this one. It is a white check, so I can try it again. Been looking at anything else you haven't liked? A tragic comedy. He shakes the life. Druggies, prostitutes, and rentiers. What do you mean rentiers? What is that? Is it the people who have a house or rent a house, or is it the people who have the house that they rent to other people? Like, because there's nothing uniting druggies and prostitutes and either one of those. Although you could say that if it is about the people who rent a house, we have they live in a house that they rent, if it is about that, then they would all be victims of the system. The druggies, because they're not looked after by the institutions of this of the country, and in fact they're probably ostracized as well. Not only are they abandoned, but they're probably prosecuted and criminalized, so they're victims. The prostitutes, not because sex work is inherently a bad thing or a thing that it means you're a victim, but rather because, at least historically, it is correlated with that. Because, people, that's the last resort for a lot of people, but not every time, obviously. And rentiers, because they need to, their labor is being sucked every day of their life until they die, just for a roof to live under. And people are living off of them, basically. Our composer says, a strange little engine seems to fire up in him again. It straightens his back. More specifically? Specifically, the whole city is a charnel house, stripped clean and draped in neon. But Martinez, he shakes his head in grave disgust, Martinez is the worst. How come? Because of the racists. Everyone is a racist in Martinez. It's their favorite thing to do in the whole world, listening to race-themed radio shows and the ruins and their lorries. He points inland, and this sort of ties into what he said before about he used the word racist before. I wonder if he's about to make the case that capitalism is racist by nature. Which is a difficult case to make in this game and in this setting. Also because the way I put it, it's like... Because the better way to put it is the current incarnation of capitalism is racist. And just saying that capitalism is racist by nature is a lot harder than just saying that the current incarnation is racist. And that's why they would all be racist. In fact, the easy way to understand this, although I don't know if it works on this setting, I wonder if he's going there, but the easy way to do this would be to think of things like, I don't know, it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky to talk about, like, it's not really tricky at all to talk about real life examples of how this could be, but it is tricky to come up with one that is not amazingly it's not amazingly contentious, but that it is a little bit easier to, because the problem is the word itself racist here, rather than the dynamics of why the current implementation of capitalism is racist. So let's look at a capitalist system that is based on colonialism, where basically an empire goes out and claims land that is of other people and forces them into labor, or creates an economic structure and status that basically forces people into labor, even if they're not slaves, but just to prop up a centralized and imperialistic trade system, like, for example, for clothing or for gold or whatever you want, right? Obviously a racist system. Imperialism tends to be very racist in general, but the people, like, I think that would be the reason, or that would be an example where he would be calling everybody living, like, for example, in the capital of the empire and wearing clothes that were made, or if not made, that at least were possible to be made because of the imperialism that foments a forced labor. In this hypothetical example of mine, you could say that everybody who wears clothes at all, or who lives inside of that empire, that everybody is racist because they're living in a racist system immediately, and they're also benefiting from racism. But then again, that's kind of complicated saying that, because it's like sort of a shock value. Obviously, somebody who is working against that system and still living inside that system, obviously that person being aware of the system and trying to bring it down and stuff like that, obviously they wouldn't be the same kind of racist anyway. If they were racist, they would be for different reasons. So they could be not racist and still wear those clothes and still be aware of the pain that their consumption brings. And we can think of modern day examples of that, like, for example, the computer systems that we have, like our cell phones or our computers. People have died to achieve the prices that we have, to achieve the manufacturing capabilities that we have for computers. People have died, and it's not them dying that is necessarily racist. It is the fact that we don't, as a society, don't care. And it is also the fact that we don't value those deaths the same way. Like, it's not even about just how much press attention it gets. The fact that there's mines in... look at that. I don't even know the country. There's one specific country that exports a lot of the... I don't know if they are used... I'm on an AMD computer. I don't know if the AMD uses... I know Intel, up until recently, at the very least, used minerals that were mined off of mines that were forced labor mines, basically. If they weren't slaves, they were definitely forced labor. And like, that's not even, like, you can even say more stuff like the prison industrial complex in the United States that employs basically forced labor as well, and certainly underpaid, a very, very underpaid system. It's also responsible for prices, at least in the United States, for prices that wouldn't otherwise be possible, because, of course, they're employing people who are paid $1 a day. And that would be racist, in particular in the United States, because the whole prison industrial complex is racist by nature. But all that sort of stuff, accusing everybody who lives in the United States of being racist because of the of the prison industrial system is a stretch. Honestly, like, it fits this character for sure, but if he's about to make that case, I hope he's about to make that case, because that's just the case that I tried to present to you, so at least you see it from my point of view and understand what my commentary where my commentary comes from. I honestly, like, it doesn't really matter whether you call people... Obviously, calling everybody in the United States racist is not, like, it doesn't go anywhere. But what does go somewhere is understanding the context in which you're doing that claim, and saying Martinez, everyone is racist, could be in that context. And so that's why I'm trying to sort of dig a little bit deeper and bury a little, and then sort of dig a little bit under the surface to try and perhaps get at the heart of the issue here. Maybe it is that. Because we don't really know. Like, I don't think the way this... even though there's some really interesting lines every once in a while in regards to race, in this game in particular, I don't think this game does a good job. So I was going to say a good enough job, but no, I don't think it does a good job at talking about race. Which, honestly, is probably not a surprise. Like, I don't know of a single game that does that. In fact, finding fiction in general... that I consider to talk about race and race issues in a good way, or in a good enough way, I suppose, is pretty difficult. And that's me, who is a right person, and I'm not a victim of racism, and live in a country who is responsible for a lot of the institutional racism all throughout the world, historically speaking anyway, because I live in Portugal, and we were the ones who came up with intercontinental slave trade, and chattel slavery as well. Together with Spain a little bit, but mostly Portugal was the first one. So yeah, it's like, even including all those things where I could be, I think this is pretty good, and then somebody who actually knows a lot better than I do would be like, no, that's all rubbish. Now, even including all that, all my shortcomings, I don't think there is a single game that deals with that I have played. Obviously, there's probably games that deal with racism in an interesting way. I wonder though. But this isn't about racism. It is about racism, but it is about the root causes of institutional racism, if that is where he's going. Let's see where he's going. Pumped full of steroids, he says, and radio have a shawl 92. And the rev counters on the car. Race this, race that. It's all sanctioned by that Social Democratic Union and the farce of a social democrat who runs it. Mr. Clare? Yes, the fly larva in his container. He let some nihilistic advertising yuppies erect a statue of Philippe III, a syphilitic murderer, on the town square to spit on the working class. Let him finish, do not interrupt. Let's see what he says. Not since the serfs of ancient Pericarnasses has history produced a more inert social class than the Martinez proletariat. The rest of Revachol at least pretends to rebuild. These people still live in ruins. In tents, like animals. He points to the church. Like those boom-boom morons on the ice. A pity they didn't drown in that tent of theirs. He keeps shaking his head with sorrow for the sight he missed. So he doesn't talk about the things that I talked about. I'm glad I talked about the things that I talked about, but that's not what he's referring to. And again, it's just sort of like another symptom of this game being way too vague with its race thing. There's a lot of like racial undertones with a lot of the terms that are used in the game, but we never really see any development. There's definitely no info. What's the word? No exposition regarding what even the races are in this setting. You have to infer all the things. But for me, still my favorite racial or racism related line was when I said, because I'm white, to what was his name? The fascist Nazi dude that has a lot of muscles. And he says, "Don't be disgusting." Which for a moment, I said this on the episode, but for a moment I thought, oh no, they're gonna make races that are not about the skin color. Which, in hindsight, if I did say that, it's not necessarily a good thing to do that, but because, it's not that it's a bad thing, as far as I know, it's just that it can lead to bad things, like, I don't know, making races about the color of your hair, well, actually, you know what, that's not, I don't know. I'm thinking about the color of the hair because that's what Valkyria Chronicle does. But Valkyria Chronicles could have just had more different colors of the skin. Because as it is, it's just a game about racism and just white people. It's not actually white people. They're all Asian, I am pretty sure. No, actually, they're not. I don't know if they are or not. It's based on, like, Europe, so they are all white people. But, like, even... The thing is, race is not about the color of the skin. And even white people, like, the term... I talked about it at the time, but still, I'm rehashing it just for a little bit. Just being white is not about how white your color is, or the color of your skin. It's not historically that, and even to this day, where whiteness has sort of broadened a lot, I would feel things like the inclusion of Irish people, even the inclusion of Jewish people themselves, to a certain extent, although I'm not Jewish, so I can't really say if that is the case, but I get the impression a lot of people think of Jewish people as white. But I think that comes from just the generalization of what it means to be white. But it's important to understand that whiteness is not, especially when analyzing history. And I say this as somebody I majored in archaeology, so I look back. I never really studied racial things in archaeology because it's not really where I focused on. But looking back at all the systems that existed, specifically before like 200 years ago, or more or less, it's important to remember that everybody that back then who nowadays could have been considered white, none of them were white. They had just different races, because that's, races are all, they're social constructs. That's, it's not biological. So, like, it's not a biological thing. You're not born, you're not born with a race any more than you're born with a country. And yes, you're born in a country of a nationality, I'm sure, and you're born in a race of a race, maybe. Depends on. Maybe you don't live in a racist system. No, you do. You're living in modern day world. Unless you don't. Are you from the future? Hello. Maybe you don't live in a racial system, and then you are not born with a race. But yeah, it's not. It's just not one of the. It's not a biological thing. Is what I mean to say. It's not about color, the color of your skin, or the size of your nose, or how tall you are. Actually, how tall you are would be... Yeah, that would... No, I don't. Nah. Nah, yeah, that is a racialized. Altoliwar is, I think, a racialized trait. It's not like a 100% clear-cut racialized thing, but definitely Nordic people get at least stereotyped as tall. So I can definitely see that being, maybe not in modern day, maybe not in the modern era, I should say, but definitely in the past is probably something that would be stereotypical, and so part of being a Nordic person. Like for example, in 2,000 years ago, I'm talking stuff like that. So yeah, it could be about how tall you are, and maybe you could pass for a Roman if you were a little bit square of shoulders or whatever, and a little bit shorter, and still a Nord. Just painted your hair a little bit, and I don't know what Romans looked like. I'm gonna say that all. The worst of them is the blood-drenched Sucreon and her yacht licking her lips. The old whore's gone now. Her gun-toting porcelain men are dead. So actually, no. The worst is that old cock parading around in his uniform, throwing balls all day. It's not enough that the racists and liberals are dancing on our graves. The old loyalist ghoul still parade the ruins too. Every morning he's there, while the parasites he fought to protect are off in Ozone or Croyan Moraine or some other island they've built their palaces on, feeding on drugs and having sex with their own children. That's all the rich really want. Sex with their own children. Throughout history. Even the royal bloodline of Suzerain. Yeah, that is actually a thing that the game goes out of its way to say, that they had sex with their own children. Congeniality, I believe, is the term. It's all just an excuse for them to have sordid sex. At least that old cunt Fristle is now dead. Fristle, I think, is the one that he's just now referring to, the loyalists. Now I have some questions about this. We did good when we pushed him under the horse car, until in the 30s, those disco whores. He breathes in, his breath heavy with hatred. You cannot make out a single word. It's like... Did I talk about that in this Let's Play, about how people... I'm sure all throughout the world, but at least here in Portugal, some people don't like music in English, or English music, because they can't understand the words. And I feel like that must be a really sad way of looking at music. But you do you, boo. You do you. It's sad because it requires... I mean, it's not sad. Well, it is. But also it is influenced by culture, because the role of music changes a lot depending on where you are. It is definitely the case that if a song doesn't have words, then I don't imagine those sort of people actually can enjoy that song, because it just doesn't have words, and I'm like, where's the words? I can't understand it. Anyway, we're out of time for the day. Our Half-Light is saying the disco whores are too much. Hatred shuts his brain's language center down, leaving only a nonsensical sputter. It does indeed. But for right now, I'm Colonel RPG, and this has been Disco Elysium. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and leave a comment. Like the video if you want to see the next episode come out sooner rather than later. But above all, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.